So we at Filmit Wonder, we're here today with Steve Maxwell. Steve, thank you so much for allowing us to have this opportunity. Why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and your background, your training, and
Wow, where do I start? I feel like I've lived 3 lifetimes already in this one. I grew up in a little town, Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Pretty much average boyhood upbringing. Later, though, I didn't really appreciate it because it was like a real boys' upbringing. Nowadays, kids, they don't get out. They don't play in nature. I can remember literally getting up in the morning during the summer when we weren't in school, and my mother packing a brown bag lunch and just say, okay, see you guys at dinner. And we would just be off in the fields playing. There was a creek nearby, like a little river. And, we would be making tree forts or rafts or whatever, or skinny dipping in the creek. And it was just so idyllic, This was like in farm country.
Near the Amish?
It was near the Amish. There were no Amish in my neighborhood, but it was that type of rural upbringing.
Right. Sure.
No tractor. Now it's so overdeveloped. All those lands are gone, all filled with houses and things. But as a young boy, that's the way we played. And I got a keen interest in physical culture and health. The people I admired most were my gym teachers. I was rather small and non-athletic, and I had been the subject of bullying in our neighborhood. I was one of the younger kids. And my father bought me a weight set when I was 10 years old. And I started training down in my basement. And all those boys had, I got my comeuppance on those guys. By the time I hit 7th grade, I had established myself as a pretty decent athlete. My sport that I excelled in was wrestling. That was my love. And by the time I was 12, I already knew I wanted to be a physical education teacher. And I actually went to the School of Health and Physical Education in Westchester, PA. You've been there.
Yeah.
And it was a very famous state teachers college at the time that specialized in physical education. It was called the School of Health and Physical Education. I graduated and taught in the public school system. I wrestled all through. Well, you follow UFC, right?
Yeah.
You ever notice that in every weight class, it's dominated by former NCAA wrestlers?
Yeah.
I was a Division I NCAA wrestler with a very stellar record, 17-2-1 my senior year.
Sure.
So I was pretty decent. Never made the elite ranks, but high level and enjoyed it. But what do you do with it when you graduate from university? I was always looking for that special thing. I didn't know, I tried the karate and the Muay Thai, and Bruce Lee was really popular back then. This is 70s, early 70s, and I was just always looking for that thing to replace wrestling.
Right.
And I also realized I didn't particularly like working with kids in the school system so much. It's pretty hard on me.
Yeah, I've done it.
And I'd always had a job in the at gyms part-time when I was actually teaching school. So I realized I really liked that fitness industry. It was in its infancy at that time. The fitness industry did not exist like it does now. There was almost no journals or periodicals. There was no men's health, men's fitness. None of this stuff existed back then. There was a couple old school bodybuilding magazines, but that was about it. And I really decided at one point I wanted to start specializing in that fitness business. When I discovered that someone would be willing to pay me good money to help train them, it was like, wow. I would have done it for free because I just enjoyed it that much. And that was the start. And I worked at many gyms as fitness director and managing places. And of course started out just as a trainer. And I opened up my own gym, Maxercise, in 1990. But just the year before that, I discovered the Gracie brothers and Gracie Jiu Jitsu. I'd taken a seminar in New York and just fell in love with it. I says, wow, this is what I've been looking for. This is the martial art that I want to work with. And so I opened up the first jiu-jitsu school on the eastern seaboard of the United States. That was about 1990. And at that time I was affiliated through the Torrance Academy. and all the Gracie brothers were one big happy family. I'm talking about the sons of Elia Gracie, not to be confused with Carlos Gracie, who had like 21 kids.
Sure. And who was the founder exactly? Was it Carlos or?
Well, Carlos was certainly the guy that learned directly from Eisai Maeda, a Japanese immigrant who went all over Europe. He was in England, he was in France, Spain, Cuba, Mexico. Maeda worked with President Theodore Roosevelt. This guy was like a tough little Japanese guy. Some people say he won over 1,000 matches, fights, no holds barred.
Wow.
He was like one of the originators of this whole concept of, anything goes. And he settled in Brazil, where he taught the Gracie family. Taught a couple other families too. Carlos was the oldest son who learned directly from Maeda. And Elliot washed, but was too sickly to actually participate. And then Carlos taught his younger brother, who then became like virtuoso. And because he was rather small and weak and not particularly athletically gifted, he changed the teaching style and even changed some of the moves and adapted him to a smaller frame to make jiu-jitsu even more user-friendly for the average person. And he proved himself, Elio Gracie, had many no-holds-barred matches to prove the efficacy of his fighting style. They were not just armchair theorists. They wanted to get in the mix and tried in real combat, and he more than proved, how good Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, he had a lot of sons. His oldest, Jorge Gracie, I still consider probably the best teacher I've ever seen. But when I first started in Torrance, all the brothers were together. And then, of course, being all alpha males, they started going their own separate ways and, wanting to do their own thing. And Hickson went off and opened up a place in Santa Monica. And Horler went back to Brazil for a while, so kind of split out. But in the beginning, during my formative time, I trained with all those guys.
Sure.
So that was a great base to get it directly from the source.
Such good experience, I'm sure, rolling with all the Gracies.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing, man. Get my ass kicked.
I'm sure. Amazing. So, Jiu-Jitsu as a sport, has it evolved into more, since the UFC anyway, into more of a points kind of sport system?
It's virtually useless for anything other than playing Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, if another grappler would go in, let's say a freestyle wrestler or something, he has no chance, obviously, against a Jiu-Jitsu guy.
Yeah.
Sambo guys, Russian Sambo, which is basically a Russianized Jiu-Jitsu system. Sambo has a very strong Jiu-Jitsu influence, but it was Russianized with the addition of folk-style wrestling. Those guys can do okay, but I mean, literally there's nothing that can beat Jiu-Jitsu on the ground for the most part. But it's become so stylized that a lot of the original self-defense has been completely lost. So if you would be attacked in the street with what you're learning right now, you would get your ass kicked.
Yeah.
Sorry to say.
Right, hands down, I'm sure.
You're not going to lay down to the ground and invite someone into your guard or jump into half guard or try to barrel bowl over somebody without getting your guts.
My friend and I joke about that day.
So it's very important to keep that martialness in. Now, that being said, there's two movements happening in Jiu-Jitsu right now. The one movement is 100% sport. There's guys that play that sport. They love it. It's what they live for. I'm not against it. I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm just saying it's not martial arts. I'm just saying enjoy it. If that's what you like, do it. Some guys don't care about the self-defense. Many of these people say, hey, man, I never get in fights. I just like the exercise and the sport and the mental aspect of the game. It's kind of like playing three-dimensional chess if you think about it. But I always liked that idea that I could defend myself against bigger, stronger attackers, bigger, stronger, faster guys. And I think Jiu-Jitsu is quite excellent for that. And I stayed true to my roots. Because my teachers came from the Elliot Gracie side of the family, and it was really drilled in my head that the self-defense is number one, being able to preserve your life. It does not mean going in the UFC and fighting. People make that mistake also. It's not about beating someone up. It's about not being beat up. So especially now, I'm in my 60s. I'm 64. I'm not going to go out there and beat guys up that are bigger and stronger, younger, faster. But it would be very hard for them to hurt me.
Sure.
That's the idea of self-defense, to preserve your life, to survive. So it's not a lot of the techniques of self-defense could not be used in the ring, could not be used in the UFC. First of all, it'd be very boring, and it would be like stalling. It'd be like avoiding the fight, and that's not going to be very much of a crowd pleaser.
Yeah. Have you used it in practice, just quickly?
Have I ever had a real fight?
I know with Jiu Jitsu, where it's been really
I've had some street encounters.
Mm.
When I lived in Philadelphia, Philadelphia's a blue-collar, working-class town, famous for its boxers. Perhaps you've heard of Smoking Joe Frazier.
Yes.
There's many high-level boxers, and it's tough, working-class town. And there was basically a saying that, in Philly, if you wanted to fight, if you wanted to fight, you could fight, every day, twice a day. And if you don't want to fight, you'd fight at least once a week. And that was not too far from it. My son grew up as a young boy, and thank God for Jiu Jitsu. He was schooled from infancy virtually, and knew his self-defense well. And he was small for his age. It more than equipped him to survive the mean streets of Philadelphia. He became feared in his school system. Not because he was a bully, not because he would go around trying to start fights, but he was known to finish fights. And in all those years, he never came home and told me that he got beat up.
Having mentioned UFC, we're quite interested to know about your thoughts about the whole UFC. You were an original investor in?
I was one of the original investors, small potatoes. But Jorge and Gracie came up with this concept. And his idea was to showcase the superiority of Jiu Jitsu as a fighting art. He wanted people to see how good it is. Because at that time, virtually nobody really knew what it was. And so he came up with this idea for a tournament that pretty much you could do anything you want. And two men go in an enclosed cage. He rejected the ropes idea because it's just too easy to hold on to ropes and, but the cage, it's like, you can still see what's going on, but at the same time, and it's soft enough that the guys won't get hurt getting slammed into the cage. Although I still think a plexiglass would have been even better. But, and then you would still have this wall that's, like in real life. Like there's always a wall or a parked car or a fence or something, right? It's not likely that you might fight in a open field, although that could happen. But he wanted to showcase Jiu Jitsu, so anything went. And Jorge went around to all his affiliates and asked if we'd be willing to invest money. And my ex-wife and I at the time, we threw some money in there along with about 10, 15 other people. And Jorge put together the first UFC in Denver, Colorado. And at that time, I was Royce's conditioning coach, his strength and conditioning coach. And it was real interesting because they picked Royce, who was not a particularly strong guy. He was small. If he weighed more than 75 kilos, I'd be shocked. He's probably about 78 kilos maybe at the time, soaking wet. And you saw what happened.
Yeah.
And you see what happens to people that don't know Jiu Jitsu. And he was being more offensive than, basically he was using Jiu Jitsu to fight other guys. But in the reality of the Elliot Gracie self-defense, you would never be that aggressive. But, because he was paid to put on a show.
And they beat 200-pound boxers, don't they?
It was quite shocking, Ken Shamrock looked, he looked like this ripped bodybuilder guy. And he was a veteran of many submission wrestling bouts in Japan. I really had my doubts when I saw that guy. I says, first of all, he's naked. He's wearing like a Speedo. What's Hoy's going to grab onto? and secondly, look at this guy. He looks like he's, carved out of granite. What's he going to do? But, he showed just how adaptive Jiu Jitsu really is.
Sure.
Pretty amazing. And now, of course, everyone knows Jiu Jitsu. Everybody is
More
studying
fashion.
it. Everyone's training it. When I say everyone, it's still very small in the world of martial arts. I bet if we went right now and did a survey right here in Munich, probably 95% of the people we would survey wouldn't even have a clue. They wouldn't even know what the UFC is. They wouldn't even know what Jiu Jitsu is. Same thing in London. I bet if we stood in a street corner outside of Harrods or something and just interviewed everyone coming down the street, probably a huge percent would have never heard of UFC, or maybe heard of it but didn't know what it is. They would have no clue what Jiu Jitsu is either.
Sure. You've talked a bit about, more on a personal front, about the American dream and how you used to strive towards it and how you even lived it. What do you think of that exactly? Do you think it's a wrong definition of happiness for you?
Let's look at the American dream and what it is. And this is not just the American dream, This could be,
the English dream.
The English dream
Yeah,
or
sure.
the European dream. But it goes something like this. You go and get your education. And then you get out and you get your dream job or a good paying job. For many, the dream job is a job that makes a lot of money, right? And then you get married, and then you buy that magical little house with the white picket fence. That's more American, And then you have your 2.5 children, and you live happily ever after. It doesn't work. For most people, they were never cut out to do that. This whole idea of propagating the species in a world that's so overpopulated, most people aren't really cut out to be parents. I mean, do you feel like you could be a good parent? Or did you have good role models? Maybe I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah.
I didn't particularly have good role models. My parents fought like cats and dogs. I often wonder, what the hell are you even married for, I mean, but that's pretty typical of a lot of marriages, you see. Where do you ever learn how to raise kids, I certainly was ill prepared. I didn't have a clue. So not only did I have a bad role model, but, I just wasn't particularly cut out for it. I should have never been doing it in the first place. But that's the American dream. And, guys will get these jobs and they work like an animal to, provide for the family. Family has, all this power. How did that ever happen? I can understand in ancient times you would band together in clans and families for survival. But in modern times, people are killing themselves for the family, for Aunt Millie and, Grandma and, all this pressure from all these different peers. It's kind of ridiculous in modern times. I don't see any real reason for it. And people drive themselves into the ground, into early grave. They give up the things they love doing, A lot of times they're working jobs they don't particularly like. I can't tell how many people I've heard dread Monday morning to have to go to work.
Absolutely.
What kind of life is that? And what are they doing? They're making money to pay for some house, right? Mortgage or whatever, or to buy stuff that they don't even need. A lot of times they'll have closets full of clothes they don't even wear. Shoes, they've worn a couple times. It'll be like 30 pair of shoes in the closet.
Yeah.
Then they got to get storage space to, put even more stuff in there. I mean, it's kind of crazy, right? And it's just like this whole thing towards materialism. Somehow they're trying to fulfill themselves through buying things, accumulating things, the house, the car, the wife, the kids. And why are people so miserable? But it's not uncommon. You hear about it all the time.
So there's a little thing there in the back of people's heads, our age especially, that gets killed. Maybe we might be happy if we just got to that, if we just had that Ferrari. But no, you've lived it, haven't you? You know exactly.
There was a point where I was doing quite well financially. I had a 4-story brownstone house in Philadelphia. I had a garage. That's a big thing in a big city where you have your own private garage, to keep your car. So it was a posh house. It was nice. I had a gym that took up 2 floors. One floor was my Jiu Jitsu school. Other floor was my personal training gym space. And was living the life. Even though it was my dream job, I found myself pretty unhappy. I found myself really restless and wondering, is this it? You know? Am I just going to die in this house? Is this the end of it? You know, I always, a lot of times I would be at work and feeling kind of bored, you know? I mean, don't get me wrong, I enjoyed working with people and I enjoyed teaching, but there was like a real feeling of non-fulfillment. I wasn't getting what I thought I would. And then I would be home thinking, wow, I wish I was back at work. But when I was at work, I'm thinking, oh man, I just wish I was at home. It was a terrible feeling of being in the bardo, in limbo, you know? So I realized that there had to be something more. There had to be something more. Actually, my divorce was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me. It got me out into the world. And I realized I was really destined to be a nomadic traveler. I realized, wow, you know, I really feel good living this minimalist lifestyle, stripping away all the non-essentials, getting down to just what is essential.
You live today. We've seen the kind of pack light philosophy.
There it is,
one
man.
bag.
That's
one
my
bag.
bag. Everything I own in this world is in that bag, pretty much.
And I guess it's that, right? You kind of letting go of everything and just trying to.
Well, a lot of people realize that, you know, through the accumulation mindset, you know, more. I mean, how many chairs can you sit in at the same time?
Just one.
Right. You know, it's just like, why does everyone feel that they just need to amass more? Well, usually it's because they don't feel good about themselves. It's all these things are a way of trying to add to yourself, when in reality, you don't need to add anything to yourself. You're already perfect the way you are.
Can you talk to us about your mindset? How do you kind of utilize positive thinking in reality?
Well, people don't realize just how powerful their thoughts are. Your reality, the way you look, everything you own, everything you have, everything you are, was created by your own thought. Does that sound shocking? There's been written a lot by many people. The New Thought people, you know, Kelly Howe, Ernest Holmes, John Randolph Price. I mean, there's many people that have written about this, but it goes way back, you know, in time. There's a new guy that just wrote about it and explains it according to quantum physics philosophy, called a happy pocket full of money. But at any rate, it's your thoughts that basically create your reality. And if you don't like, it's like you know, life has this dream-like quality. So if you don't like the dream you're in, you know, you just create another dream by thinking. Now, whether people realize it or not, they're using this facility all the time. Their thoughts are made manifest in the physical, but a lot of people are unconscious of it. So all their negative thoughts are manifesting along with their positive thoughts. So the trick is to really monitor what you're thinking. And even more important, what are you saying? Because once you take a thought and then put it into the spoken word, it projects an energy out into the universe. And due to the universal law of attraction, you're going to get back exactly the kind of energy you're going to get. Some people call it karma. You know, in the Christian Bible, it says, you know, as you reap, so shall you sow. Or so as you sow, so shall you reap. So, you know, thoughts are like the little seeds. Your words are like little seeds that grow into an energy form, which becomes your life. So people need to understand that they have this facility, they have this power, they're not helpless. They need to make it work for them by becoming aware of this process. It transcends any religion, by the way. It's not religiosity or anything like that. But most of the great prophets and the people that came to us with this higher consciousness were all fully aware of this process.
So
it's interesting none of them used it for material gain.
Yeah. What would be a method of thought, not control, but being aware of your thoughts? Do you meditate, or when you get a thought into your head, if it's one that you don't want to appear in reality. What do you do with it? Do you just let it sit there? Do you
some thoughts you just basically reject. By consciously rejecting, they don't manifest. Because a lot of the thoughts in your mind come from the outside. They don't come from you. They come from what we call the collective. In other words, we're in Munich, right? Millions of people. And all those energy thought forms, are going in our mind too. You can't help it. I'll give an example. In New York City, for example, when Trump won the election, my friend wrote me, he says, oh my God, he says, it's like a ghost town. People are walking around like zombies. Everyone's so depressed. It's so quiet here. He says, people are really down. And he says, it's funny. He says, I'm feeling really depressed myself. And he was aware of it, you see. But a lot of people weren't aware of it. That was the collective energy, the fear thoughts. Everyone thinking, the United States is all going to hell in a handbasket, and, we're all doomed. Our enemy has won, and, all these negative fear thoughts. They don't realize that it was this collective energy that was bringing them down. You can circumvent that just by being consciously aware. You do not have to sit in a cross-legged, seiza position and Om and all that stuff for meditation. It's all about conscious awareness.
Talking about kind of this collective depression, how would you define happiness on the individual level? Because obviously, you have external factors coming in, but also you have to, be aware of certain things.
That's a good question. One that I've never actually defined happiness, but a big part of that would be the absence of anxiety and the absence of fear. Not so much something that you get, but something you don't have.
So not a pleasurable kind of thing, more peaceful.
When you're sitting around full of fear and anxiety and thinking all these negative things, that's obviously not a state of happiness. And so the state of happiness would have to be the absence of those things, where you're feeling calm and serene and peaceful, and you have no ill feelings towards any person or anybody.
And that all ties in with living in the present, does it?
You must, well, it's really funny because, a lot of people are into like past life or past life experience, and of course everyone's always thinking about what they're going to do tomorrow or next week and when I'm going to go on holiday, next month. And so it seems like you're either living in the past or beating yourself up over some past mistake you might have made. I mean, think how many times you'll think of some past embarrassment, or maybe a victory. Maybe you're living in the past because of something you did, but it's still living in the past. The past doesn't really exist. It's just some biochemical process in your brain. You don't even know whether it really existed the way you're thinking anyway. You can't trust it. You've heard of selective memory and all that.
Yeah, memory might distort it.
For sure, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had memories of my childhood, for example, a special place I used to like to play, and I'll go back and I'll look. It was like, well, that doesn't look like the way I remembered it at all.
Yeah.
It could be quite disappointing sometimes, You develop these embellished memories, so it's best just to forget about the past and maybe look forward to the future, but live right now. Be aware of what's going on around you, listening to people, eye contact when you talk to people, literally listen to what they're saying. How often do we just kind of tune people out and just get into our own heads?
Sure.
Or lose ourselves in, video games or, of course I like to watch, shows and things, but a lot of people just constantly lose themselves in these type of entertainments and distractions, and they try to distract themselves. Get into the sensual pleasure, This could be, pornography. Most guys surf porn. Very destructive. you know.
Absolutely.
Watching ultra-violent video games and movies. Tons of young guys are totally, literally addicted to video games and so forth. No human interaction. Or, you know,
No
some of the online forums and things, this is only social interaction. But it's not real. They're living some kind of false fantasy world. And it prevents you from being present and being in the now.
For these young individuals who perhaps are detached.
It's
from
not just
reality.
young guys either, man.
Yeah. I mean, for all
Plenty of guys my baby boomer generation that fell into the same traps.
And well, you know, for people who live these detached kind of lives and feel hard done by in life, you know, that they're in a bad moment, they're in this, you know, they've let this collective depression perhaps affect them. What advice would you give to them?
Awareness is the first step to correction. You can't correct what you don't know. So you got to be aware of this process happening. Then you got to find a way that you can start to program positive thinking into your life. I recommend Ernest Holmes' Science of Mind, probably the best description ever of the way the human mind works. And then you start making positive affirmations. For every negative thing that jumps in your head, you make 2 or 3 positive affirmations so that you can reprogram the mind. Because the mind does get programmed. It gets programmed from an early age. Parents, I'm sure if you think about it, you still have your mother's nagging voice in there, certain things, yeah? Put on a fresh pair of underwear. You never know, you know? You might have to go to the hospital. I mean, you know, all that silly stuff that gets put in there. Religious authorities in your life, maybe a minister or a preacher, teachers, coaches, you know, spouses. You know, you get those voices in your head. And a lot of people are just living with this all the time, and a lot of it's really negative stuff too. So you reprogram. Every time you become aware, you make a positive statement.
Sure. Do you get scared now then?
Oh yeah, sure.
You do?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Sure.
But you just realize it's a fraud. It's a fake.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. You know the acronym FEAR, FEAR. Future events aren't real.
Right.
I like that.
Basically, you're afraid of something that may happen,
Yeah.
but it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
So it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid anyway because it might happen. But it's like the boogeyman.
There's no point worrying about it until.
No point worrying about it. And if you keep concentrating on it long enough, whatever it is that you fear, that is what is going to be made manifest in your life.
Mm-hmm.
So by focusing on that fear all the time, I've seen it happen over and over. Now, does that mean that everything's smooth sailing for me? I don't run into some negative situations? No, not at all. You know, I'm not God. I have human failings. I still have negative thinking in my brain. Occasionally I'll manifest a negative situation, but I realize what it is, and rather than fight it or condemn it, I realize, well, I put myself here, all right? So I'll just start to work my way out of it. I just realize that it's a temporary thing, that it will pass, and just, you know, kind of smile with it and just let it go. You miss a flight, or you get a flight delay, or, you know, sometimes things are just beyond your control. And, you know, you'll change what you can change, what you are able to change, but things you can't change, you just realize, okay, this is what it is. I'm okay, you know, I'll be fine.
You've done a lot of breathing work and breathing seminars. How exactly do you breathe correctly? Is it through the nose? Is there a certain way you breathe?
Think of it for this. Nose is for breathing, mouth is for eating. You don't breathe through your pie hole.
Sure.
You breathe through your nose.
And deeply.
And to the diaphragm. You know, the idea of deep breathing does not mean filling the whole tank necessarily. You stay out of the upper lobes of the lungs, you stay down to the lower lobes of the lungs. You know, your lungs have different lobes. The upper lobes are fight or flight. The lower lobes are rest and digest. Parasympathetic versus sympathetic nervous system. By staying parasympathetic, staying in the rest and digest, you can remain calm. when you're breathing in your upper chest, you create fear spikes. This is most people. And the worst, of course, is inhaling through the mouth. Now, do you ever inhale through your mouth? In emergencies, obviously. You know, you need the extra oxygen. But just realize that when you're upper chest breathing and inhaling through the mouth, you can't think clearly. Your motor skills and coordination go out the window. You will get an adrenaline spike and become temporarily strong, but you're not particularly controlled. Better to remain calm. That's one thing that Rickson Gracie was so masterful with. He was able to master his breath and just remain calm. Even Hoist too. It was unbelievable how calm he would be. Even when being crushed and smashed by really big, heavy guys really going after him. And he would just remain calm. Even if he was in a bad situation, he wouldn't panic. He would just breathe and eventually wait for the guy to get tired so he could escape and get out.
I mean, even with, obviously, I'm sure you must notice a lot of wrong breathing in your day-to-day, normal people. But with athletes, is it something you also pick up on? I mean, are there, have you trained athletes who have...
There's plenty of fairly talented athletes with great genetics that don't breathe as well or as efficiently as they could. And it can do harm. It can cause premature aging, premature breakdown of the body. You get this oxidative stress. By breathing improperly, especially what I call panic breathing, which is most people, you get all these stress hormones, cortisol being one, muscle wasting, fat storage hormone. It was good when in ancient times when you didn't have a meal coming, you didn't know when your next meal would be, being able to utilize your muscles for protein needs and being able to lay down a rapid storage of body fat was pretty essential for your survival. But nowadays we have refrigerators and the corner store, so it kind of works against us now. But people talk about nutrition all the time, but the nutrient most people are missing is oxygen, and probably the second one would be vitamin D from the sun. We've all been brainwashed. Oh, the sun's gonna make us all get skin cancer and die. But you definitely need to expose your skin to the sun, and you definitely need to learn to breathe so you get that vital oxygen, so that you're not deprived of O2.
Have you heard of Wim Hof?
I have.
It's his breathing method works. I can provide testimony for that. But it's what do you think about?
Well, when you say works, it works in what way?
What I mean by it works as, the point of his method really is
to endure cold.
Yeah, it's cold immersion really. And
so I have to ask you, why would you want to do that?
Well, I don't want to do that.
It makes no sense. It's extremist behavior. I'm against the Wim Hof method. I'm telling you right now. I think it causes oxidative stress, premature aging. Why? Anytime you go to extremism in anything, extreme Jiu Jitsu. Try going and training every day, twice a day, like a lot of young blokes do. I'll tell you right now, within a month, your fingers will be killing you, your elbows will be killing you, every muscle will hurt in your body, your posture will all go to shit. How do I know that?
I'm sure you
right. Extreme triathlon, extreme marathon running, or these ultra distance runs. How about this new thing now, this phenomenon of obstacle course racing? Yeah, the short ones are fun. I'm not against it, but these people take it to the extreme. I've seen these things where they'll have like a 2-day thing where you're just going for 24 hours straight or 48 hours. Just crazy stuff, right?
I just
pushing the limit.
I just find it helps to calm me down. And the cold, there's it may be pushing it to the extreme, but if you slowly work your way into it and slowly kind of and feel the cold, I feel amazing after a nice cold shower. And it really wakes me up. It really gets me up in the morning.
Do you know why?
Not for everyone.
Do you know why?
No.
Because you've adrenalized yourself. You're becoming an adrenaline junkie. You're depending on adrenaline like you would coffee.
Sure. Maybe I should look into it more.
Well, look at Wim Hof.
Yeah.
Do you like what you say? He's 7 years younger than me. Look at his face.
He looks very worn out.
He looks like an old, worn out man.
Sure.
He's enervating himself.
Yeah.
So if you want to prematurely age, keep doing it.
Sure, thank you.
I'm not saying that some cold
I'll take your
water
advice. Yeah.
is a bad thing. You know, I take the cold showers. It's
Mm.
unnecessary to go to these great extremes, and why would you want to? There's
Sure.
no proven health benefit. If anything, we know for a fact that it's going to prematurely age you. Just like we were talking about Paleolithic diet. Paleolithic hunters died early. They didn't even get to 50 years old. What's that tell you? It's an
Sure.
extremist diet.
Mm.
You don't need to be extreme about anything. The more extreme you get, extreme weightlifting, extreme kettlebells, CrossFit, the most extreme of the extremes. You know, you don't last very long. UFC fighting, very short career window. And you probably have shaved 10 years off the end of your life, just taking the trauma to the head. Now, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm not telling people not to do stuff. I'm just saying look at it. What is it? Know what the repercussions are. Know what the negatives are. And then go in with an educated mind. If you still want to do it, go for it. Because maybe living a long life is not something you care about. Take the average NFL football player. They're the greatest of the great in America. They're the biggest, strongest, fastest athletes. They make a lot of money. You know, why would they do something like, you know, U.S. used to be the world's greatest Olympic weightlifters, right? No one gives a crap about Olympic weightlifting. Why would they? You can't make any money. You make peanuts. So all the guys with that kind of fast twitch muscle fiber go into NFL football. Why not? Make some money. Track and field. You know, no one cares about that stuff. They want to go where, you know, and, you know, they get the fan adulation. If you would ask one of those guys after his career, you know, he's all beat up and moving a little slow, was it worth it? He might say, hell yeah. You know, the money, you know, the adulation from the fans, listen to the roar of 500,000 people, you know, national TV, women throwing their panties at you. I mean, you know, they might say yes, it was worth it. So living a long life and being safe, that might not be the greatest thing either.
Yeah, it's the same for rugby, I guess, right? I mean, you know, it's concussion is commonplace, and they, you know, very short career.
All those type of sports, but it's important for people to realize the negative ramifications. Don't go in blind. Go in knowing full well that these are injurious to your health, that they lower your lifespan. They literally shave years off the end of your life, and they do erode your health. Now, if you're willing to pay that price, go for it. But a lot of people say, nah, I think I'd rather do something else. I'd rather do something that isn't so hard on my body.
Could you tell us more about your own diet? What do you eat generally, or try and eat?
I follow a very similar diet to the Gracie diet. It's food combining based. I've read many different versions of the food combining. The guy I liked the most, that seemed to make the most sense, was this guy by the name of Dr. John Tilden. He was the turn of the century American physician who was very animate about systematic undereating. You know, one of the longest living populations on earth are the Okinawans, who have impeccable health. They practice a form of systematic undereating where they'll only eat to 70%, 70 to 80%. And they won't eat till they're full, and they don't eat until they're satisfied. They stop just short, like feeling like they could eat a little bit more. So that's part of the diet that I follow, systematic undereating. The other part is not mixing a lot of foods in one meal. So I usually will separate protein from starch. For example, a meat sandwich, a hamburger sandwich wouldn't be part of my diet. I'll keep my protein separate from the starches. And usually it's a starch-based meal, a fruit-based meal, a protein-based meal. And I'll mix them up any way I feel. Fruit in the morning, starch at lunch, protein at night. Protein in the morning, starch at lunch, fruit at night. Generally, I like a light supper, not a heavy meal before I go to bed. And I like to have at least 2 to 3 hours between my evening meal and going to bed. If I feel ill, I'll fast. If I can't fast, then I'll either have freshly made fruit smoothies or juice, but I won't eat anything more than that. Let's say, for example, I'm traveling, and you know, when you fast, you should rest. But let's say I'm forced to travel or talk or teach. Okay, I'll have fruit until the cold or whatever passes. And along with the protein meal, I'll always have a good raw leaf green salad, maybe a few cooked vegetables. With the starch meal, also maybe a salad, a green salad. If I feel like I'm gaining weight, let's say I'm getting unwanted accumulation of fat, I will cut the starch. You know, it's easy to overdo it.
And why do you fast?
Pardon?
Well, how can you fast?
Fasting allows the digestive process to relax. People don't realize how much energy it takes to digest your food. It takes a huge amount of energy. You actually use quite a few calories just for your body to break down the food in your system. And when your digestion becomes overburdened, it starts to impair your immune system. Also, you get an accumulated amount of waste. When your digestion is impaired, you don't fully digest your foods. Sometimes you get these partially digested food molecules passing the gut membrane into the blood. This is a big source of inflammation. All your inflammatory responses, which are responsible for a decrease, well, can cause depression. It can cause a decrease in your hormonal system. It can be impairing to the body. By fasting and not burdening yourself with digestion, your immune system kicks into hyperdrive and can easily defeat anything in your body. Your body's fully capable of healing itself. You know, when doctors give you medication or whatever, that's not what's causing you to be better. Your body is, a lot of times these medications merely mask symptoms while your body does the healing. But doctors are incapable of helping you heal. Western medicine is good for one thing: emergency medicine. If you got in an automobile accident and you got your arm mangled, they could do a great job surgically reconstructing it. Or in some cases, losing a limb and reattaching it. I mean, amazing things, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to things like flu, common cold, preventative medicine, you're better off going to holistic medical people or naturopathists or alternative medicine. Much better at prevention and also helping you heal from just common ailments. For emergency stuff, broken bones, trauma, things like that, you know, modern medicine is amazing that way. But it's important to use the right tool and the right personnel for the right thing. For my health, I stay away from Western doctors as much as I can. For trauma, of course, I'm going to go to those guys.
Sure.
Broken bones, that type of stuff.
We're talking about your retirement slightly. I don't expect you to retire soon, although you look, very, very young. I'm certainly not your age. But what do you think you do? What do you think you will do? Sorry, when you get to an age where you can't do what you're doing now. So some Jiu Jitsu, for example, or will you be able to roll into your 90s or?
Well, between you and God's ears, let's hope.
Sure.
Let's, but there's more than just hope, because I have seen plenty of mentors, people. Well, there's another point I want to bring up. Who do you go to for information?
What type of information?
Any information about health, longevity, fitness. Most young men go to Men's Health magazine, Men's Fitness magazine, Muscle and Fitness, one of these periodicals or journals, or something online. But who are the people that you're listening to? Are they 20, 30, or 40? They don't have a clue if they are. You don't even start to think clearly until you're well past the half-century mark. Then your mind starts to see things.
Yeah.
The way they are. I was always careful who I took my information from. I don't want to listen to a guy in his 20s or 30s or 40s. They don't have a clue about diet or exercise or anything else. I want to listen to a guy that passed through the other side. Master Gracie. He was still in his 90s and still moving around pretty damn spry. I had a Jiu Jitsu lesson from him when he was in his late 80s, and he was still getting on the mat and rolling with people. There was a famous guy, American health pioneer, Paul Bragg, that was like 87 years young when he died. You know how he died? Surfing accident. He got hit with the head with his own surfboard.
Which can happen to anyone at any age. So.
I mean, it was time for him to go.
Yeah.
My point is, he was surfing, for Christ's sake.
Yeah.
He died doing what he loved.
Yeah.
Jack LaLanne
Sure.
was in his 90s. The guy was still in his late 80s doing one-arm push-ups and like just a remarkably fit guy. He used to do this exhibition of swimming from Alcatraz Island while shackled. It was a prison island in San Francisco Bay, freezing cold water. He would swim with his hands and feet shackled while towing boats full of people. Man, you can look it up online. But I knew that guy. I listened to what he had to say, especially about eating light. He became very strict with his diet as he got older and older. So, but there's plenty of people. Georges Hackenschmidt, the Russian Lion, he became very, very philosophical in his older days. Stopped all the heavy weightlifting, got very much into a very strict diet, a lot more body weight type work. Nikolai Amosov, the Russian Jack LaLanne, he was a former cardiothoracic surgeon. He survived both Lenin and Stalin. They had all those pushes where they were killing all the intellectuals and throwing them into the gulags. He survived that, became decorated, honored citizen. He came up with 1,000 moves to heaven and coined the term joint mobility. These are guys I listen to. Shandor Ramite from Shadow Yoga. Shandor, is in his 70s. He was the guy that told me that between 60 and 64 are like the most critical time for a man's life. If you can get through that period, then it's kind of smooth sailing. So they're the people I listen to. They're the advice I take because I know that they have proven that what they say works. Wim Hof, too young. If there's some guy 80 years old that said, I've been doing the Wim Hof, I'd say, okay, but you don't see anybody. So you got to hold it suspicious.
I will be.
Yeah, suspicious. So anyway, to retirement is for people that hate doing what they do. If you have a job and it sucks, you can't wait to retire. The other thing, everyone dies. No one gets out of here alive. My capacity is diminishing. Even from 10 years ago, I'm much more diminished than what I was even 10 years ago. It's just a natural part of the aging process. Happens to every man at some point. However, as long as I'm able to move and people are willing to listen to me, I will continue to teach and travel until that moment that I can. And then I'll let God guide me into the next thing. I follow this philosophy of let go, let God. When I say God, I don't mean some celestial Santa Claus. I mean that higher part of myself, the God within, or the Christ within, the Buddha within, whatever you want to call it. That higher self that makes me a unique expression of God. That will guide me to do the right thing at the right time, to be in the right place at the right time, say the right thing at the right time. So there's never any need for fear or worry because you have a higher part of you that will guide you to do exactly what it is you need to do, but you got to be in touch with it. The fear will keep you from being able to follow the guidance from your higher self. If you're full of anxiety or disbelief or skepticism or pessimism, then you won't be able to hear it.
You need the absence of those things, right?
You need the absence. You need 100% faith.
Yeah.
When you have that faith, it will take you through. You always know what to do. You'll always be provided for. Look at every creature in God's earth. They have the perfect diet available to them, right? Everything is provided. Aren't we the highest of all God's creatures? Doesn't it make sense that we would be provided for? It's just that we surround ourselves with all these distractions. We lose that connectedness with that higher power. But you don't have to be a monk in a cave to get reconnected. It's actually easier than what you might think. But once again, it's the awareness of all this that is the first step. Once you become aware, then the rest becomes easier and easier. And I recommend that everyone just read. Read Yogananda, read Ernest Holmes, read these people. Read the people that have gone and passed through and that were successful. Napoleon Hill.
I read that.
Yeah.
And so in 10 years' time, where do you see yourself?
I don't.
Same thing. You don't.
I don't project.
Now? Sure.
Yeah, I don't project like that. I mean, I'll look forward to tomorrow or next week or next month.
Right.
That's about as far as I'll go. I don't try to project and put my will, because I've pretty much let go. So I don't have any real goals or anything anymore. I just let God take me where and put me where I need to be. And I have 100% trust in that process. So he's my banker, he's my, he's everything. Because I just realized that if I start to visualize trying to be, I used to use the power of visualization to accomplish things, even materialize physical things, and it works. It really does work. But I realized that I don't need to do that, because maybe my little mind is trying to take me to a particular future goal. What if there's a much better thing that I could have never possibly even thought about, that only my higher self could be aware? I'm limiting myself, am I? It'd be like if you're trying to visualize getting $100,000 or 100,000 pounds in your mind, but maybe God has a plan for you to have 100 million. You've already limited yourself by even putting a number on it, or putting a color on it, or putting a shape on it, or putting a size on it. Why not just, let go and let God?
Is that how you achieved the amount?
But it's not easy.
I'm sure. Is that how you achieved the big house then? Was that part of the visualization?
Probably. And of course you got to also take into account your significant other. That was her visualization. That was her dream.
Right.
Now she's stuck with that health in Philly, man. That mortgage. I just signed that over to her so fast after the divorce. Said, take it, man. It's yours. I want my name off this, man.
Sure.
It was such a freeing.
And a last question. For all of our 20-year-old viewers out there, what advice would you give a 20-year-old our age, if, now, I guess, anyone?
Well, don't be afraid. Realize that you have a power within you to make a wonderful life. That don't be fooled by the illusion of all these things happening in the world. Kind of scary, Brexit, and some people consider Trump very frightening. Some people love him, by the way. At least almost half the U.S. population obviously liked him. But, don't let these, Putin, the boogeyman, don't let these things scare you. Don't read the papers. Maybe look at a headline and just be aware, but don't read, don't watch news on TV. Try not to be influenced by that negative collective fear mindset. Find something you really like to do and do it. Now, if you're stuck having to make money right now, there's where you might use your visualization to visualize yourself doing something that you really love doing. And just know that it's going to happen. Know it's going to happen. But, most people are going to be unconscious. Most people will never awaken in this life. Or maybe, if you believe in reincarnation, many lives. I mean, someone has to clean the streets.
Sure.
Someone has to clean the toilets. Someone has to pick the fruit. Not that these are lower human beings, not that I'm putting them down. I just understand that it's a necessary part of, not everyone's ready to awaken to the truth. Some people just need to be asleep for a while. But all you can really do is just be the best person you can be, and try to be a shining example of what you do, and just be the best possible human you can be. And of course, there's no power greater than love.
And follow your passion.
And follow your passion. Maybe don't quit your day job yet, but yeah. And not everyone's going to be able to do that. There are realities where some people may be stuck in a more menial. But you can live an ordinary life in an extraordinary way. I'm going to give an example. One of my favorite authors was this guy, Dan Millman. You ever hear of Dan Millman? The Way of the Peaceful Warrior? Great book. I recommend you read it. Very interesting. And then later he wrote this awesome... it was about a young college kid that meets a guy working at a gas station. and this gas station attendant is like this old dude with his beer and everything, who happens to be like an enlightened spiritual master, doing this ordinary, craptastic job of just running a gas station, a filling station. But the guy is completely fulfilled because he just doesn't have any real material needs. And later he wrote another book, The Journey of Socrates, which is how this guy became this enlightened spiritual master. And it starts back in old Russia. And it has to do with the Russian martial arts system. It's really interesting. It's a real fun book.
Right.
They're like novels, but they're like spiritual novels.
Yeah.
Really, really. Way of the Peaceful Warrior, I think his second book was something, Journey of the Peaceful Warrior or something, where he goes to Hawaii and meets the kahunas, the spiritual people in Hawaii. And then there's The Journey of Socrates, but you can buy them on Amazon or whatever. But anyway, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. An ordinary life in an extraordinary way. Yeah. So maybe you don't have any skills or talents at all, and maybe you don't even have like a real passion, but you can still be a toll booth collector, but be the best damn toll booth collector you can be. Be extraordinary in the way you do it, and treat people with love and kindness, and you'll manifest only goodness. It doesn't matter. Even if you're cleaning toilets,
yeah,
you can be an ascended spiritual master and do the most menial task in a very enlightened, conscious way. So it's not all about, wealth and riches. And, I'm kind of in a weird spot where I don't own anything, no home, no house, no car. I just live in hotel rooms just all over the place. There's an upside and, of course, a downside. This lifestyle is not for everyone. Not everyone is cut out to roam the planet like I do. For many people, it would not be an enjoyable existence. It'd just be maybe too stressful for some. They need something more peaceful. So I'm not saying everyone should just quit their job and become a nomad.
Sure.
Yeah.
But maybe you could.
Maybe, possibly.
I think you'd like it.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for your time.
You're
It's
welcome.
been an absolute privilege
Thank
and
you.
a pleasure. And yeah.
You've given some amazing advice to all
Well,
of our viewers, so thank you so much.
I always welcome the opportunity to put the energy out there. And look, I'm still a growth and progress also. I mean, I'm ever evolving myself, and each person does change. People that knew me 10 years ago, I'm like completely different.
Sure.
Maybe the same basic, but very much different. And 10 years from now, different yet. Everyone evolves at their own pace. So
maybe we can do this again sometime.
yeah, I mean, who knows what discoveries.
Thank you very much.
Hey, you're welcome.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great.